我们现在要来接受翔宇兄的访问啊。我们这个要怎么讲？这个是 rap singer and composer 我们台湾的饶舌音乐创作者啊。这个很年轻，还是跟我差不多岁。
属鸡
啊，你属鸡哦 ，OK，6 years younger than me 啊。然后等一下说英语，所以有点紧张 ，nervous 啊。我们要绕音译啊，因为这个翔宇兄呢，他做这个自媒体啊，要跟我们这个 international audience introduce something about reunification versus independence. This question in Taiwan. 今天这期节目呢，相当的特别，是日前呢，我接受了一位叫做钟翔宇的自媒体主持人，他的访谈，用的呢是英语来进行问答。那么翔宇兄啊，他是台籍青年，从小呢是在美国长大。即便如此啊，他拥有一颗中国心，那么主要在 YouTube 上主持许多英文访谈的节目，向西方世界来介绍正确的两岸关系以及台湾的政治，导正许多西方人，包括海外华裔对台湾问题的认知。他本身也是优秀的 rap 饶舌歌曲的创作者以及演唱者，大家可以订阅他相关 YouTube 的频道，一个呢是 StraitTalkXY 翔宇，主要呢就是英语政论的频道，另外一个呢是他的中文姓名钟翔宇这样的一个账号，那么主要是他音乐 MV 的作品。那么以下呢主要呢是谈论到关于在台湾岛内这几年以美论的兴起，它的前因后果以及相关我们可以延伸讨论的一些内容，请大家一起来收看。
I am extremely honored to have on Straight Talk someone who is very well known not just over here in Taiwan, but on the Chinese mainland as well. Someone who I would say is one of the most vocal advocates of Chinese reunification on the ground here in Taiwan from my generation. Someone who I've followed for over 10 years now. You may not know him yet, but my job today is to introduce him to the English-speaking world by having him talk about his political journey over the years. Please let me introduce you all to Mr. Wang炳忠.炳忠兄, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the show.
Yeah, thank you. This is really my pleasure to be here to have this interview with you and talk to you and our audience.
My pleasure to host you, and hopefully the audience will feel the same. So could you please briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, I was born in 1987, and this year symbolized a beginning of so-called Taiwan's democratization, or you can say liberation, because in this year, so-called martial law was suspended. And then this is also a beginning for both sides of the Taiwan Straits people began to meet with each other, because before 1987, people in Taiwan could not meet any person from Chinese mainland. So after that, many veterans from Chinese mainland brought by KMT since 1949 to Taiwan, they could come back to their home. So I think the year of my birth is a symbol of the beginning of the new era for cross-strait relations. And then for me, my family are so-called 本省人, local Taiwanese people in Taiwan, because my ancestors came to the island of Taiwan about the mid-17th century. So more than 300 years, my family has become inhabitants in Taiwan for so long, So many people will say we need to identify ourselves as Taiwanese instead of Chinese. But I don't think so. I think both Taiwanese and Chinese entity should not be excluded with each other. And this is really complex question for me to think about for so long time. And now I am maybe you can say cyber warrior or internet influencer for promotion of reunification.
A lot of people in the West who consider themselves pro-China like to draw a comparison between Taipei's relationship with Washington and Israel's relationship with America. In other words, they think the U.S. props up Taipei the same way it props up Tel Aviv with unconditional support. But the reality is pretty different. Whatever support the U.S. has given Taiwan over the years has always come with strings attached. And in recent times, it's only gotten shakier. Under President Trump especially, Washington's approach looks a lot less like protecting Taiwan and more like squeezing it for whatever it can get, forcing TSMC to relocate to Arizona, giving us a bad deal with tariffs, pushing Taipei to buy overpriced and outdated weapons, as usual, all while gearing the island for a war with the mainland that everyone knows the U.S. itself has no intention of fighting, and everybody in Taiwan knows we cannot win. So I want to kick off our conversation today by breaking this down. So my first question to you, Bing-Zhong, is this. During Trump's first presidency, we saw he had a pretty decent relationship with former leader Tsai Ing-wen. Back then, many supporters of the DPP thought of Trump as pro-Taiwan. But today, it seems like Trump almost views current leader赖清德as a nuisance. Why is this?
Yeah, just like what you said, I remembered about 2020, most of DPP supporters were also supporters for Donald Trump, and they hated Biden at that time. But today, many DPP supporters will think of Trump as seems like not pro-Taiwan as before. And also, just like what you said, many people will think Trump thinks of Lai Ching-te as a nuisance. So why? I think although Trump's attitude toward Taiwan, especially present attitude toward Taiwan, seems different from his first presidency, the very fact has never changed that he's thinking of Taiwan as a chess piece for the United States to counter China. And the difference is, in his first presidency, he used to adopt so-called maximum pressure strategy against Beijing. So Taiwan questions seemed a useful tool for him to pressure Beijing. So at that time, Tsai Ing-wen's separatism seemed useful and just accorded with Donald Trump's policy at that time. But gradually, Donald Trump felt that the strategy seemed ineffective for the United States to deal with Beijing gradually. For example, Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in 2022, it not only failed to force Beijing to give up the red line, but also just provided an opportunity for Beijing to normalize their military movements around the island of Taiwan. And also, there have been so many conflicts around the world, such as Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, and India, Pakistan. So many conflicts compelled the United States to give up, to be involved into so many conflicts, and the United States is unable to handle so many wars simultaneously. So for Donald Trump, he should adjust the relations with Beijing. And it's better for him to bargain with rather than to combat with Beijing. So today, it's more important for him to handle the Taiwan question carefully. And maybe you can say to rein in Taiwan separatism, to keep Lai Ching-te, the current Taiwanese leader, on a short leash. So that's why I think he thinks of Lai Ching-te as a nuisance, as a troublemaker. And also, in addition, remember, when the United States can show their support for Taiwan independence strongly, when they should adopt so-called maximum pressure strategy against Beijing, they can also demonstrate their ability to control Taiwan independence for Beijing, on the other hand, to create bargaining chips with Beijing. So it's why Trump seems different from his first presidency.
It seems to me like Taiwan separatists have always been in the position from the U.S. as dogs on a leash. If they want to apply pressure to Beijing, they loosen up the leash to let the dogs charge forward. But then when they get what they want from Beijing, they're like, okay, come back.
Yes.
You only bite when we tell you to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So although both Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te are from the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, it seems that there are qualitative differences between the two. This applies to how they handle Taiwan's internal politics as well as Taipei's relationship with Beijing. Tsai Ing-wen was far less confrontational with Beijing, even when she did have some separatist rhetoric. So could you please explain how the two differ and perhaps why? I know one of the reasons is Tsai Ing-wen is the protege of Li Denghui, who was very good at manipulating power struggles. Lai Ching-te does not have that skill.
Yep. Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te are quite different in terms of their career background and the situation they faced when they became a president. In terms of career background, Tsai Ing-wen had served as an advisor on cross-strait relations and international affairs for several years before she became a president. And Lai Ching-te has no experience in international affairs, cross-strait relations, but only in Taiwan's domestic politics and those political campaigns. And also, the situation they faced when they became a president are totally different. During Tsai Ing-wen's presidency, about 2016 to 2024, the DPP had always kept majority in Taiwan's legislature. But Lai Ching-te, when he won the presidential campaign in 2024, he won only about 40%, so less than half of the votes. And also the DPP lost majority in Taiwan's legislature. So Lai Ching-te seems to be more rough and impatient because he's anxious for defeating all of the Taiwanese opposition, And that's a shame for him because he won less than half of the votes. And for Tsai Ing-wen, she's skilled in promoting Taiwan independence or Taiwanese separatism in the name of many beautiful and progressive values such as human rights, democracy, liberty, or gender equality, and environment protection, and so on. And those beautiful slogans and so-called progressive values are always charming, always beautiful to median voters. So young people especially like Tsai Ing-wen rather than Lai Ching-te. And also for their promotion for Taiwan independence, Tsai Ing-wen understands very well how to modify Taiwan independence by replacing it with the slogan, maintaining the status quo. But Lai Ching-te pays too much attention to Taiwan defense resilience, and which just reminds the Taiwan society of the terror of war. So, for example, young people would like to pay lip service to defense, to fighting against Beijing. But indeed, if you force them to go to the battlefield or just military service extension, almost they opposed it. So about 2022, the DPP authorities extended the original military service. The original military service only for 4 months. But after 2022, the DPP authorities extended it into 1 year. And most of the young people opposed it very much. So that's one of the reasons why Lai Ching-te lost many young voters. So that's a big difference between two leaders. And also besides, Tsai Ing-wen understands very well how to always keep in concord, in accordance with the United States needs. The United States pace of counter-China strategy. Taiwan knows very well. Sometimes I need to be offensive. Sometimes I need to be more conservative. She knows how to handle, how to change the tempo. But Lai Ching-te only cares about his needs, cares about how to defeat the opposition power by inciting Taiwan independence, and regardless of the shift of the United States about the United States' new strategy against or the new approach to Beijing.
Oh, that's a very good answer. It covers all of the bases I can think of. Another thing is Tsai Ing-wen actually worked within the KMT bureaucracy early on in her career. Lai Ching-te has no experience working with the opposition because when he was mayor of Tainan, everyone was DPP.
And he got his power only by winning the campaigns.
Yes.
Yeah. So he paid much attention to seizing power. He just knows how to fight against the opposition and knows nothing about cross-strait or international affairs.
Exactly. And I think a good representation of the shifting attitudes of the United States towards Taiwan could be seen in the recent tariff negotiations. Taiwan got a pretty bad deal compared to South Korea and Japan. And oftentimes people in Taiwan like to compare ourselves to South Korea and Japan as reliable United States allies in the region. And this is despite complying with U.S. demands to set up TSMC fabrication plants in Arizona. So to you, what does this signal about the relationship between Taiwan and the U.S., as well as the relations between Beijing and Washington?
I think Trump's treatment for Taiwan in recent times, especially in recent tariff negotiations, signals his eagerness for selling out Taiwan. How to say that? I think Donald Trump thinks that Taiwan may be reunified by Beijing unavoidably in the near future. So it's better for him to bargain with Beijing rather than to combat with Beijing.
So like a soft landing rather than a crash.
Yes. And because the United States is going to lose Taiwan in the near future. So it's more important for him to suck Taiwan dry as possible as they can, to extract any valuable things in Taiwan as soon as possible. So the United States demand for TSMC to increase investments into the United States is an explicit example, as TSMC's manufacturer of advanced chips is so crucial to the United States. So it's more important for America to move the TSMC instead of leave it in Taiwan, So although some Taiwanese politicians argue that we can gain more the United States assistance in defense by sacrificing TSMC, I think it's totally ridiculous because without TSMC, Taiwan is invaluable in Donald Trump's eyes. So furthermore, with the weapon of tariff, the United States just can compel Taiwan to sacrifice more for the United States. And so-called the implied commitment to come to Taiwan's defense is also another bargaining chips for the United States to demand Taiwan more, and especially expensive military procurements. And in short, Trump believes that the commitment to come to Taiwan's defense is not essential for the United States' strategy against Beijing. He told the media for several times that he refused to guarantee Taiwan's defense because he should also negotiate things with Beijing. So it's so clear that he only cares about how to suck Taiwan dry as soon as possible instead of Taiwan's safety or Taiwanese interests and so on. So I think it's totally ridiculous for DPP's politicians always cheating Taiwanese people that we can gain more benefits, we can gain more safety from their states by sacrificing A, sacrificing B, sacrificing C. But the most important and the most valuable thing for Taiwan is TSMC. and they just sacrificed it in the beginning of the negotiations. So Taiwan is going to be sucked dry. It's so clear, but I don't know why so many politicians in Taiwan just avoid that fact and keep on cheating the Taiwanese people that we can gain more benefits from the United States. We can gain the commitment for our safety by sacrificing our economic.
United States is sucking Taiwan dry. Taiwan's politicians are sucking the people dry.
Uh-huh.
Once everything's sucked dry, they go away. Wherever they have houses in the United States or wherever else,
Yes,
they're
it's
going to be
just
fine.
like a chain. They gain benefits simultaneously, except for people.
It seems to me like the United States government behaves like an abusive husband, and the Taiwan authorities, administration, acts like an abused wife who still, for some reason, loves her husband, even though the husband is treating her very badly. And then this dynamic, it's very interesting because the DPP treats its voters like a very abusive partner. It's like, okay, if you're not with me, who else is going to take care of you? Who else is going to look after your interests? You are nothing without us. That's the feeling I get from the DPP. I'm not saying the other parties don't have their problems, but right now the DPP is incumbent. So I feel the need to talk about the DPP more.
He's most responsible for that.
Exactly. Now, recently, the director of AIT, so the American Institute in Taiwan, Raymond Green, the director, held a meeting with the chairman of the oppositional TPP, Mr. Huang Guochang, as well as 5 legislators from the KMT. Now, usually, the AIT works with whichever party is incumbent. So right now, they should only really be having correspondence with the DPP. And it's very unusual for them to have high-profile meetings with the opposition.
Yes.
So do you think there is any significance to this? And is the U.S. further signaling its disappointment in the troublemaker Lai Ching-te?
First of all, I think the very fact we still understand is either DPP or KMT is puppet controlled by Washington. Yeah, both of them are proxy of the United States in Taiwan.
Every now and then there are people in the KMT who are not puppets, but then the U.S. kind of
Yes,
like
they,
Miss Hong Shou-zhu,
they just change it. They cannot even attend the election. Needless to say, winning the campaign. So both of two parties in Taiwan are puppets of the United States, and even the third largest party in Taiwan, TPP, 民众党, Taiwan People's Party, they still dare not to disobey the United States will, right? So I think the change of AIT's attitude toward 国民党 and DPP is because during the past decade, since the United States adopted what I just mentioned, maximum pressure strategy against Beijing, DPP seemed to be more useful than KMT for the United States at that time, because DPP always keeps an extreme ideology of Taiwan independence and counter-China policy. So it just accords with the United States' needs at that time. And on the other hand, KMT preferred to engage Beijing, to still have stable relations with Beijing and keep balance between the United States and Chinese mainland. And also KMT preferred to ask the United States for some exchange when Taiwan sacrifice our interests. And KMT will say, okay, I sacrifice and you need to pay back something in exchange for us. So it seemed not so useful, not as useful as DPP. But gradually, what I just mentioned, the United States shifted their strategic approach to Beijing, and the situation has changed recently. Lai Ching-te cannot control the majority of legislature in Taiwan, and also he totally failed in so-called great recourse against KMT legislators just recently. So for the United States, it's realistic for them to win the support from the opposition for their sales to Taiwan, especially military sales to Taiwan. And also, Donald Trump dislikes the loser. And Lai Ching-te is just a loser now.
I don't like losers. I like winners.
Yeah, so that's why Lai Ching-te cannot gain the United States support or preference, just like AIT's attitude toward DPP before. And also, I think AIT's shift of the attitude toward Kuomintang also is a signal of their estimate of the high possibility of the victory by Kuomintang in 2028 Taiwan's campaign.
Yeah, that basically summarizes the situation in my opinion. And also, I think another error that Lai Ching-te's camp made is back in 2024, Lai Ching-te's camp erroneously believed that Kamala Harris would beat Donald Trump. So through Miss Xiao Mei-qin, Xiao Bi-kim, they cozied up to the Democrats a little bit too much. And Donald Trump's personality is, I don't like people who are friends with my enemies. So I think Donald Trump held a grudge. Not to mention, Lai Ching-te invited Mike Pompeo to Taiwan shortly before the inauguration, and Donald Trump hates Mike Pompeo.
I don't know why they always invited Donald Trump's enemy to Taiwan, and they think it's a good opportunity for them to enhance the relations with the United States. I don't know why, because I think DPP, if they want to become a puppet of the United States, they really need to know who is in power in Washington.
So I think all of this leads to the final question of this segment, which is, what are the qualitative differences between Trump's handling of the Taiwan question and Biden's handling of the situation? And how do these differences impact Taiwan? And specifically, I know you mentioned this a lot already, the shift from maximum pressure on Beijing to more of a reconciliatory
Bargaining.
Yeah. What do you make of this situation?
Well, generally speaking, Taiwan is considered to be a chess piece by not only Biden, but also Trump. The qualitative difference is their way how to play the so-called Taiwan card. And for Biden, he tried to strengthen the relations with the allies in Indo-Pacific, including Taiwan. And he made efforts to arm Taiwan to the teeth in his presidency. And he believed that it could be a good deterrence, a successful deterrence against Beijing by arming Taiwan. And he also thought that even Beijing still takes military action against Taiwan, a well-armed Taiwan can let Beijing into a big trap and to weaken Chinese mainland's development and to lead into a big loss for Beijing. That's Biden's opinion. But on the other hand, for Donald Trump, he doesn't believe Taiwan's self-defense ability anymore. He thinks if war breaks out, Taiwan's military can only hold on within several hours and to a week. So it's useless for the United States to combat with Beijing to conquer Chinese mainland.
And right now there are 3 aircraft carriers from the People's Liberation Army. And that's already changing the power balance within the region, especially within the first island chain. I think once the 4th aircraft carrier is launched, then the U.S. does not have much military leverage in the region anymore. We're already seeing troops from Ryukyu or Okinawa being shipped back to
the 2nd or to the 3rd island chain. Right?
Exactly. So that signals that the U.S. is not very optimistic, regardless of what it says about its control over this region anymore.
Yes, and it's unable to get into so many conflicts simultaneously.
Exactly.
So when there are conflicts in Middle East and at the same time in Russia, Ukraine, the United States is in a big trouble. So that's why Donald Trump shifted his strategy against China. He thinks what I just mentioned for several times, to bargain is better than to combat with Beijing. And Taiwan's authorities should worry not only when the United States weakens their support for Taiwan separatism, but also when the United States encourages Taiwan to cross the red line. Because in the former situation, DPP should worry about being abandoned by Washington. And in the latter situation, they should also worry about Taiwan should fight against Beijing without aid and alone. Since that is so, why don't we negotiate with Beijing by we Chinese ourselves for a peaceful unification instead of becoming a pawn of the United States?
Exactly. That would be like if the United States told me to go have a fist fight with Guanzhang. I'm not going to do it.
Because, you know, this game will be lost, definitely.
Yeah. So given these shifts in U.S. policy and strategic attitudes, it's no surprise that public opinion over here in Taiwan is beginning to shift as well. And more people are starting to question the long-standing assumptions about our relationship with Washington. So I want to shift our conversation towards how the international situation is impacting the voices on the ground here in Taiwan. I think so many things, even in just the last few months or maybe the last year, have changed. And I mean, for well over a decade, both of us have spoken to our audiences here in Taiwan. I mean, yours is much bigger than mine, about, you know, U.S. hegemony. But until more recently, most people just thought we were crazy.
And most of people doubt the United States' ability.
Exactly. I mean, now, 疑美论, the theory of questioning the U.S.'s intentions is becoming more and more, I'm not saying it's completely mainstream yet, but it's a sizable portion of the public opinion nowadays. So besides the things that we've talked about so far, what are some current events that have happened in the last couple of years that have led many in Taiwan to reevaluate Taipei's relationship with Washington?
I think recently Taiwanese people doubt not only the United States' intention, but also the United States' ability to so-called defense, to come to Taiwan's defense against Chinese mainland. And there have been at least 3 symbolic events. First, Biden's sudden decision to withdraw the U.S. troops from Afghanistan. And that just reminded of some elder generations in Taiwan of similar withdrawals from Vietnam in 1975, and also the similar one from Taiwan in 1979. And also many people still remember that the United States hit their decision to break off the formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan's authorities in 1978. They hit that decision in secret until only about 7 hours before the United States decided to announce it. So more and more Taiwanese people have become worried about being abandoned by the United States in the near future. And the second one is the Russia-Ukraine war in the next year, 2022. And it absolutely exacerbated Taiwan's people's worry. The term U.S. skepticism, in Chinese 疑美论, has been mentioned for more and more times than before in Taiwan's media. And even though the DPP made great efforts to use the Ukraine war as a positive example to teach Taiwanese people that we can also hold on as so long as Ukraine did if cross-strait war breaks out. However, the very fact that we see is the United States never comes to Ukraine's war. So the Ukraine's case told us that not only the United States would not come to defense for Ukraine, for other countries, and also we found the fact that Ukraine's President Zelensky, he was even bullied by Donald Trump and his subordinates at the White House just several months ago. And third, there's also a symbolic event for us, that is recently high tariffs imposed by the United States on Taiwan. And that's unthinkable and terrible to most of Taiwan's people, since Taiwan's economy relies heavily on, we say, export orientation. So that's really a big blow to people's livelihood in Taiwan. And even though DPP authorities have complied to almost all the United States demands, Taiwan still got, just like what you mentioned, a big deal, worse than South Korea and Japan. So therefore, more and more people argue that Taiwan should not rely on the United States, but fight against Beijing on our own. I think it's still not correct direction we need to think about it. So what I want to lead people to think is, why should we always fight against Beijing? Why? And we also need to think, is the United States' interests always in accordance with Taiwan's? I think it's very clear, especially in tariff negotiations. It's definitely not. So why can we unify with Beijing to counter the United States demands, the United States, I think, even economic threat to Taiwan? And also, according to the U.S.-China Shanghai Communique in 1972, the United States has claimed its interests in a peaceful settlement of the Taiwan question by the Chinese themselves. So I can also tell our audience and the United States that without the U.S. intervention, Taiwan question will be resolved more easily, quickly, and peacefully.
I think after all of these symbolic events that have happened, what you are saying is more and more people are perhaps beginning to understand that the United States has never viewed us as equal partners or friends, but as a chess piece, like we've talked about today. Would you say this is correct?
Yep, of course. The United States always think of Taiwan as a chess piece, not so-called partner. But most of Taiwan's politicians still keep on cheating Taiwanese people. And it's because Taiwan's politicians and United States politicians can all win by cheating Taiwanese people that the United States can be a protector of Taiwan and can so-called defend Taiwan against Chinese mainland. You know, through promoting this idea, the politicians of both Taiwan and the United States can gain huge benefits. The United States politicians can make their tough anti-Chinese shows and help them get domestic votes and bargain with Beijing. And especially, the United States military-industrial complex gain huge profit from military sales to Taiwan. And besides, Taiwan's politicians can also get support by convincing people that they can keep good relations with the United States and to ensure Taiwan's safety. But however, I think to the common people in Taiwan, recently the situations has been changed. While some of them still keep in confidence with the United States, some have begun to doubt whether the United States' interests can be in accordance with Taiwan's or not. And just like what I said, especially in recent tariff negotiations, the answer seems to be more clear. Taiwan has been demanded to sacrifice TSMC and to increase investments into the United States and to purchase more American products assigned by Trump. But in fact, no one knows if and how it can exchange for tariff reduction. But DPP authorities just comply with the United States all demands nevertheless. So it really triggers people to reevaluate the United States' role in Taiwan's future. And just like what I mentioned, to rethink why we only rely on the United States and why we always keep in fighting against Beijing. So finally, although TPP has still lured people to an assumption that the United States will come to Taiwan's defense if we sacrifice anything the United States demanded, in fact, it's only implied and never be absolute. So in Ukraine's war, we see it very clearly that even Ukraine military has held on more than 3.5 years. The United States has never come to Ukraine's defense. And just let me talk a real story. In 2017, I visited Washington and met a former senior official, the United States official in charge of Taiwan affairs. And he told me that you should hold on within 2 to 3 weeks to let the United States decide whether to support Taiwan's defense or not if war occurs. You know, he said within 2 to 3 weeks. But however, in Ukraine's war, more than 3 years, and the United States still never come.
Could you name who the senior official is? Or?
It's a very famous one, but I just need to hide it in secret.
Okay, you can tell me afterwards.
Okay.
So I think it's very clear that our relationship with Washington is closer to Ukraine's relationship than Israel's, which is very funny because I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of pro-China commentators in the West who don't quite understand Taiwan's situation, who talk about Taipei as if it's Tel Aviv. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The relations between Taiwan and United States is like relationship between Ukraine and United States rather than Israel and the United States. Because in Ukraine case, just like what I mentioned for several times, neither Biden nor Trump sent troops to assist Ukraine. They sent many military aids to Ukraine. But most of Republicans criticize it very fierce, very fractiously. So after Trump took on his presidency, he just revealed his straight unfriendliness and intolerance to Zelensky and even butted him at the White House. So that's Ukraine case. But in Israel case, both Biden and Trump shows very aggressively and very actively to support Israel against Palestine. So that's different. And as a matter of fact, in the very beginning of Ukraine war, DPP in Taiwan was frightened and scared and worried about Taiwan might be the next one. So At that time, they emphasized for several times that Taiwan will not become Ukraine. At that time, they said that. But gradually, since the war seems to be protracted war, DPP had shifted their attitude, and they began to use Ukraine war as a positive example and to teach Taiwanese people that we can learn after Ukraine. And if we can hold on as long as Ukraine did, we can get support from the United States. So Tsai Ing-wen also used this case for the reason why she decided to extend Taiwan's military compulsory service, extended into 1 year. So in Ukraine case, even though they have held on for more than 3 years, but the United States has never come. And recently, the United States even demanded Zelensky to accept the armistice conditions of ceding territories. So undoubtedly, Taiwan's condition is worse than Ukraine war if war occurs, because we don't have enough strategic depth. And Taiwan's military can only hold on about several hours to a week, or just like what I mentioned, the former official of the United States demanded Taiwan should hold on within 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, even we hold on within 2 to 3 weeks, it's useless because in Ukraine's case, they held on for more than 3 years. And how? What happened?
All of the men are gone.
Yes. So just more people dead in battles, right? So I really want to lead more Taiwanese people to rethink about why we always insist on combating with Beijing or fighting against Chinese mainland, or why should we reject any peaceful proposal for Taiwan's question?
Why fight our own countrymen, our own brothers and sisters for the foreigner?
Yes, we are one family, right? So as a matter of fact, we are all one family. We are all Chinese. Why should we fight with each other? Why we always insist on this ideology? And why we always think our interests can be in accordance with the United States?
And these are questions that more and more people are beginning to ask. So my question is, how do you see the DPP is responding to this? Because to me, it seems like Lai Ching-te's administration is becoming very nervous.
I think Lai Ching-te is a politician. So he only cares about how to seize power, how to defeat the opposition power. Okay, how to revenge on Ke Wen-je for his shame, because Ke Wen-je is originally pro-DPP. He's the creator of the third largest party, TPP, in Taiwan, and he's a former Taipei city mayor. Ke Wen-je originally pro-TPP, but afterwards, he began to rethink about cross-strait relations, and he seemed more pragmatic than Taiwan independence fundamentalists. He thinks what can be beneficial to people is most important, so he can accept any peaceful proposal for Taiwan's future. So that's why he shifted his attitude toward Beijing and then create TPP. So because of Ke Wen-je, he attracted, I think, about half of the original DPP voters.
I go to TPP events and all of the people, I can just tell they were former DPP supporters. You can tell by the way they carry themselves that they were never KMT supporters. Just something about them you can tell.
Yes, so that's really a shame for Lai Ching-te, because of Ke Wen-je, Lai Ching-te lost almost half of the original voters. So that's why Lai Ching-te revenged on Ke Wen-je, and without any concrete proof, but he insisted on accusing Ke Wen-je of corruption and even put him into detention for more than 1 year.
Why do you think the DPP is working so hard to prevent the spread of 疑美论? If they're politicians and that's what the people are thinking, maybe they should just embrace it and work with it and accept the fact that people are questioning America's abilities and intentions. And plus, if the DPP were truly fighting for independence, surely independence means independence from the U.S. as well, right?
Well, so it just proves that DPP is not working for real Taiwan's independence. They just used Taiwan independence as their tool for their struggle for power. By inciting Taiwan's independence ideology, DPP can always defeat the opposition. When DPP lost in some elections, when DPP faced some poor situation, they would always think of this way to help them gain back their support. And it's also their successful campaign technique to incite Taiwan independence ideology and to make an illusion that it seems to be more and more people embracing such separatist ideals as DPP, because most median voters would be afraid to reveal their real opposition against DPP in the public. That is kind of terror of, maybe you can say terror of green, because DPP symbol is the color of green. And it seemed like a spiral of silence. Yeah.
That's very true, because I don't know if you know this, but recently I made a song and music video criticizing the Lai Ching-te government. And quite a few people messaged me privately saying, hey, I support your song, I like it, but I'm afraid to click like or share it because I don't want some of my pro-DPP friends to see it and cut ties with me.
Yeah, it's a kind of terror.
And that's just very, I respect them for that. I understand their situation. I've certainly lost some friends over this. Former friends have distanced themselves from me because of my views, whereas I don't really distance myself from people with opposing views on reunification or separatism, because at the end of the day, I know that a lot of these things, people change with the times, and I don't see these people as individuals as my enemies. I see the forces behind them that are leading them to these.
We need to make effort to lead them to think about that.
Yes. That's the way I think of it. But it does seem that the DPP's former strategy of accusing Beijing of everything that goes wrong in Taiwan, playing the Kangjongbao Tai card, the oppose Beijing and defend Taiwan card, and talking about, we're defending democracy from authoritarianism. I think these propaganda tools are just not working as effectively anymore, as now enough time has passed. The DPP's been back in power for 9 years now, almost 10, and people's lives aren't getting better, but in fact getting worse. Instead of dealing with the issues of people's livelihood, it's all ideology. What's your take
He
on
was
this?
tired of them.
Yes.
And I think during 2019 to 2020, especially when Tsai Ing-wen endeavored to her second presidency, protests, or you can say riots, violent riots happening in Hong Kong, helped DPP very much in 2019.
Otherwise, she was going to lose in 2020.
Yes. And after that, when people became more and more tired of those ideologies, and Taiwan independence seems to be not so cool as before, because in the past, Taiwan independence seems to be a romantic dream. And when they shouted the slogans of Taiwan independence, they could enjoy the feeling of rebellions, which young people always like. But when DPP started to force them to do military service, to extend the service into 1 year, and even more than 1 year in the near future. Young people feel, well, we need to think seriously about Taiwan independence, about how much we should sacrifice for that. And when, just like what I mentioned before, Lai Qingde pays too much attention to defense resilience, to how to fight against Beijing, and even ask senior high school students if you are willing to assist battlefield if war occurs. That's really frightened most of median voters in Taiwan about the terror of war and unexpected change of the status quo. So that's why so-called 抗中保台, to oppose China and to defend Taiwan's card, not so effective as before. And also, Taiwan's people begin to worry about democracy decline because Lai Qingde always label all of the opposition parties traitors to Taiwan.
Fellow travelers of the Communist Party of China.
Yes. So when he always emphasizes that, in many people's eyes, it will harm Taiwan's freedom of speech and checks and balance in Taiwan's democracy.
I also think on top of all of this that you have said, the fact that the ineffective leadership of the DPP plus the increasing pressure from the U.S., militarily, the defense resilience, as well as economically, such as hollowing out Taiwan, getting TSMC to set up new factories in Arizona. In the long term, I don't think we're exactly seeing it completely yet. But do you think in the long term it will push popular opinion in Taiwan closer with Beijing?
Of course. In the very beginning, I need to emphasize that a so-called anti-authoritarian card has become less effective to Taiwan society because when we see examples such as Trump incited violent riots to occupy the Capitol Hill in 2021, it's just like a very strong overthrow of democratic procedures. And when Nancy Pelosi criticized it very much, it just reminded us of Nancy Pelosi's praise for similar riots in Hong Kong. So that's totally double standard for those Western politicians mentioning so-called democracy. If anti-authoritarianism card is so important, why Donald Trump just compel Zelensky to accept the armistice condition of ceding territory? So it's very clear that so-called democracy or anti-authoritarianism card not useful and not so important for the United States. What the United States really cares is their own interests. That's the fact. And I remembered Lin Feifan, the Deputy Secretary General of Taiwan's National Security Council. He insisted that anyone in Taiwan cannot be skeptical about the United States. If you are skeptical about the United States, you are infiltrated by Beijing. You are helpers, you are followers of the Chinese Communist Party. But why can we not be skeptical about the United States? And in recent tariff negotiations, when Donald Trump imposed so high tariff on Taiwan, Taiwan has no choice but to embrace the almost only important market that is Chinese mainland. That's the United States not Chinese Communist Party forced Taiwan to do that. So the very fact is the United States is who forced Taiwan to be closer to Beijing.